All right. So thank you, everyone, for joining another session of Thriving Thursday. For those who probably will be joining for the first time, what do we do on Thriving Thursday? What we do is that we look into a tip or an idea or a concept that can help us to thrive in a season or in a transition. So if you're probably in a particular season, maybe it's something that you don't usually find yourself in, a season you probably don't usually find yourself in, then definitely you'll be getting something away, something valuable that you can apply or that you can, execute on in your space to see yourself, even do a little bit much more. And I know I use the word thriving a lot, and I've actually had the opportunity of asking some of my guests what they think thriving is. But for today, let's stick with this simple understanding that thriving is about for you to keep going, despite everything. It's the ability to keep going despite everything. So that's what it is to thrive. You know how it is when you have a garden and then maybe for some reasons you don't have the opportunity to take care of the plants like you would want, and then you'll find out that some of them actually still do well despite the fact that you're not giving it the attention you want. Yeah, so now we're not saying that you shouldn't give yourself attention to grow, but just in case things are not coming up in life the way you would like them to, you would want it to be better. Definitely you'll be having something that you can learn every time you join us on Thriving Thursday. So we have this 9 p.m. West African time every Thursday. And sometimes you'll find me here. Sometimes you will find another faculty member. And of course, sometimes you could see a guest who will be sharing a thriving story or a panel, and then we'll be looking into a particular concept together. Let's go straight into the gist for today. Yesterday, we had a podcast episode released. So if you've not listened to that yet, let me give you a wave, Temilola. I see you on Instagram. If you've not listened to the podcast of yesterday, then you probably want to go to Spotify, iTunes, or even our YouTube channel. All right, you want to look out for The Polished Lens. We released an episode yesterday and it was a 78 episode. I was writing the number today and I was like 78. Wow. Okay, I wrote that earlier on in the week when I wrote the draft, but writing it again today, I was like 78. And it's interesting that I'm actually talking about staying on track, a change or a goal, or, something you're working on today. So I was like, if I was going to tell my story to someone, right, who's probably starting out for the first time and is on episode 1, what would I be talking about? So today, the things we're going to be digging into are things that I would say that I've used in my space and things that I know work. Now, do I do it all the time, or do I do them perfectly now? Maybe not. All right. But I know that they work. Okay. But the thing is that in the past, getting me to where I am today, these things have worked for me, and I know they can work for you as well. All right. So like I said yesterday, the episode that we had on the podcast was staying consistent with your desired change. And I know that, one of the things that we did mention in that conversation was that a lot of times when we come into a new season, I mentioned season at the beginning. When we come into a new season, we want to start something. We want to change something. We want to launch out. But then I realized, and I'm sure you probably would agree with me, right, that starting something is one thing. Maintaining that thing is a different ball game. And I gave examples on the episode. I talked about starting a business. All right. If you've started a business before, maybe even when you were little, if you were probably in elementary or primary school and you started a business and you're like, oh, mommy, I want to buy some candy and sell it to my friends in school. You started. You would agree with me that staying consistent was quite a challenge, right? Okay. Now, for those of us who are also married, we know that when we first of all met our spouses, and we started the journey, dating, courting, and then finally walked down the aisle. It was a particular journey, right? But staying married and staying happily married, it's a whole different ball game, right? Okay, so that's basically how it is when we come to a point and we're like, you know what, I want to start to do something in my life, something different. And this happens for us a lot of times when we come to, say, a new year, okay? And now this March, at the end of March, we'll be coming to the end of the first quarter of the year. So I know a lot of people will be coming into April wanting to modify things and say, okay, you know what, I didn't really do anything much about my goals at the beginning of the year. I want to be a bit more serious, right? Into this second quarter of the year and all of that. So I'm hoping that some of the ideas we'll be looking into today will be things that many of us will be able to review together. All right. Now, yesterday on the podcast, I'm referring to the podcast again because I need you to go and listen to it. It was quite a short one, but I mean, you'll be able to get the ideas of where we are coming from today, because today what we're doing is we're digging deeper into the conversation we had, and we're adding a little bit of spice to it, something extra that I'm going to be dropping today that I didn't talk about on the podcast, right? So I talked about three things that we need to be able to stay consistent consistent with our change journey. So when you say you want to start to do something different or something new in your space, it's like you're coming into a new journey, right? And so I mentioned 3 things that I believe will be very helpful. They have been helpful for me, my space. There are things that I would recommend to anyone, anytime. And there are things that I've also recommended to the people I've worked with as well. And that's that you need to have an image. You need to be able to do reviews and appreciate your milestones. And then thirdly, you need to also have accountability, right? Accountability, I stress that as well, is that accountability is a very strong one. So today, as we go deeper, we're going to look into the first and the third one. We're just going to talk about the image, and then we're going to talk about the image and then accountability as well. Okay, so one example I gave on the podcast, for those of us who are in the Christian space, Christian circle, people of faith, you know the story about how, God had given Abraham a promise. And the promise was that, he was going to be the father of many nations. And, he didn't have a child at that time. But, it was like, he probably was struggling with that conversation. Like, I don't even have a child at this time. I don't have a son. I don't have a son, to pass on my legacy or the promises I've got from God to. And then God is telling me that I will have children and I will have, generations that will come after me. Now, what God did was some night like that, God called Abraham out into the night to look at the stars. And he looked up and the stars were a lot that night. All those times when you go out in the night and you see that the stars are a lot, that's probably what happened to Abraham that day. And God said, as much of what you can see, holding on to it, the numbers of the stars, that's the numbers you're going to be thinking about when you think of the children that are going to come from you and the generations that will outlive you. That's the image that God was trying to help him to create. And also there was also another example where God talked about the grains of the sand. There has to be a connection. And this is why I would say that an image is a very profound thing on your change journey. Thank you for joining Money Naturals. I see you. An image is a very strong thing on your change journey. I know a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, FolaFayo, I've heard a bit about vision boards. How do I really get into that thing? How do I do it? Let me start here again. You see, a mental image is actually where everything starts for us. Our mind works on a mental image. Let's do a simple exercise right now. So I'm going to call some things out and I want you to kind of, take your time and listen to me. All right? I'm going to call some things out. So I'll start with this. Elephant. Elephant. Okay? Now, purple elephant. Purple elephant. Okay? Are you taking those words with me? Good. Let's try this other one. Your seat in secondary school or in high school. That's the seat you usually sat in class in high school. Okay? Now, I'm sure at the time when I first mentioned the word elephant, the words, what came to your mind wasn't the words or the letters ELEPH, ANT. I'm very sure that was not the case. I'm sure that was not the case. What came to your mind was a picture of an animal that had big legs, chunky legs, in fact, right? A very big body, tiny tail, with big ears, right? And then when I said purple elephant, your mind started trying to work out, purple, how would an elephant look being purple? And then when we moved on to another example and I said, your seat in class in secondary school, I'm sure you started thinking about, the wooden desk, your position in class. Maybe you even remembered, a particular teacher at the front of the class or a particular, classmate of yours that sat beside you a lot of times. That's the power of the mind. When you're thinking about things that have happened in the past or that are happening in the future for you or that you would love to happen in the future for you, you start with an image. And so anytime you're trying to create a future or you're trying to create a change. So some people may be saying, no, well, FolaFayo, you know what? It's not like I want to start something, just like I want to change. I want to modify something in my space. You need an image. You need an image because that's the way your mind works. And your mind is the power plant of every change and creation you could ever come into. It's the power plant. And the thing about the image is that the image has this grace. I will start to use the word grace a lot more when I explain this. But it has like a grace. It has like the ability to pull you towards an actualization. So when you have that image, it pulls you. And every time you remember it, you kind of have this reboost of motivation and inspiration to do something about that particular goal or the end of what it is that you want to achieve. So anytime you say to yourself that I want to start maybe watching documentaries that are in line with the work that I'm doing, you want to start having an image of, okay, what channels could probably give me that genre of movies or shows that I would like to watch, what time of the day. You start thinking about it, you start forming that image. When that image is being formed in you, it starts to give you a form of empowerment that draws you towards that goal. Let me tell you something interesting that happened to me today. So I have a room in the house that, we call the office. And my laptop was actually on the table, the laptop that I'm using to, broadcast this to the Facebook group. Now, I had my laptop there with its cable, charger, everything all there. But you know what? I went into the room to do something else. So at that point, I just focused on what it is that I came to the room to do. And then I went downstairs. You wouldn't believe that when I got downstairs and I looked at the dining table where I'm actually having this session from, I realized that I didn't have my laptop there. And then I started asking myself, where exactly is my laptop? And then I remembered that, is it possible that the laptop is in the office where I'm coming from? And you won't believe that I went to the office and right there on the table where I was coming from was the laptop. And you know the reason why I missed it? I didn't have an image of the laptop when I got into that room, even though it was there. So the thing about having an image of the change that you want to create is that when the thing is there, you can spot it. When the opportunities are there to connect with someone, to tweak something, to latch on an opportunity, when it comes into your space, you can seize it. But if you do not have an image, if you do not have a mental image, it will be difficult. I missed picking my laptop up and coming downstairs only because I did not go into the office thinking about my laptop. So when you get up every day, when you go into your week, not having the mental image of what that change will look like for you, you don't have a motivation, you don't have anything drawing you. The picture, it draws you. That mental image, it draws you into that space of achieving that thing. So my encouragement is for us to start asking ourselves, what image do we have? And now another thing I could do when I'm working with, someone who is probably like, okay, FolaFayo, I'm in a session with you. What should I be looking out for if I want to create that image? 2 questions you want to ask yourself. What will be the reward of that change being actualized? On one hand, you want to appreciate what the reward would be. Then on the other hand, you want to appreciate what the consequences would be if that change doesn't come through for you. Because the stronger the rewards and probably the consequences, the more likely you are to stay on that track of change. The more likely you are to stay on that track of change. So you want to tell yourself, for example, you want to say, if I start to eat less junk food, for those of us that like junk food, right? And you're like, you know what? I think I need to stop this thing. You now ask yourself, what could be the benefits? Let's start with the benefits. The benefits or the rewards of enjoying a healthy living, a lifestyle. And you're like, okay, well, number one, I will glow. If I'm drinking more water, I will definitely glow. People say that a lot about people who drink water, your skin glows. Or you now start saying that, that amount of money I've been spending in the hospitals is going to be a little bit reduced because I'm not going to be going a lot to the doctor to have to complain about one thing or another. So you now start to envision the benefits and the rewards of staying on that change track. And then the consequences if you slip off it. Because when you are able to conceptualize this, when you hold that image, the likelihood of staying on track heightens. It is, the ratio or the probability, you are increasing that probability. So the question is, do you have an image? I asked that on the podcast episode yesterday, and I'm asking that today. Do you have an image that you're holding on to? Whatever you're trying to create, if you want to say, oh my God, I want to scale up my business. Okay, what does scaling up your business look like for you? Many people who have been in sessions with me will tell you that FolaFayo always ask that question. What does it really look like for you? And then we start probing a bit deeper into all the other aspects that you need to, consider. And then, like I said, ask yourself what the rewards will be. Ask yourself what the consequences could also be so that you can stay on track. And then if possible, for some of us who like, the whole exercise of making up a vision board, put up a vision board. But if you're not sure if you have that image clear yet, what you need to do is sit down with someone and explain what you see to that person. Now, when the person tells you back what they hear from you and it sounds really different, then you have not really been able to formulate that image well. So what you could do is like get a trusted friend and have that exercise done. But if you're saying, you know what, FolaFayo, I've seen some images online that kind of connect strongly with what I see of the change that I want to actualize, I think that's what I'm going to do. Then you need to kind of go into the exercise or, sign up for a vision board exercise and have that put together, because the more you see what it is that you're looking out for, or what you're trying to create, or what you're trying to stay consistent with, the more likely it is that you will be able to accomplish it. Okay, now let's go to accountability. That's the third one that I shared on yesterday. Now for accountability, a lot of people may think that, oh, you know what, I have friends that I talk to and probably I'm kind of accountable to them. All right, so let's look out for how are you going to know if you've really been accountable to someone on something? All right. The first thing is that that person must be an objective person in your space. It's not someone that when you tell something like, oh, I was so tired today, that book that I said I was going to read, I couldn't read it. And then the person will say, I understand. It's so difficult being a mom, being a wife, running a business at the same time. The person is being emotional and sentimental with you. You don't need that as accountability. You want someone that will help you to appreciate the challenges that you might be facing, but at the same time, helping you probe what is holding you back. So you want something that will lead to a place of objective conversation. Now, you need to look around you and ask yourself, who are the friends that I have that I can say, this person is very objective? Those friends that, okay, I'm not talking about friends that don't speak the truth in love, because those ones are hard to work with. We're talking about people that are very objective, not people that will bring in sentiments into conversations. Objectivity is very key for you when you're looking out for someone who you be accountable. Somebody who will be firm with you to tell you, you are not doing it right. I've learned this thing somewhere. This is not the way it is done. You have to go and correct. And somebody who wouldn't mind, pushing you and, inspiring you to starting all over again if you need to do that. That objective positioning is very important. You need to have it as well. Now, the other thing is you want to look out for when you're thinking, who should you have as an accountability partner, or who should you be accountable to when you're on your change track? It's also someone who is growing in their space. So when I was having this conversation earlier with my husband today, and I was telling him some of the things that we'll be looking into, I said the truth is, sometimes you probably don't need the person to actually be growing in the area you're growing in. Because people always say, if you've not worked the work that I want to go into, you don't deserve to be someone that I can look up to. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. So if you're looking out for a mentor to be accountable to, yes, you probably want someone who has walked the journey ahead of you, okay? But if you're looking out for a coach doesn't necessarily have to be someone who has walked that path with you. The person needs to, first of all, be objective, and then the person needs to have the ability to confirm for you what growth is like in their own space. So if you're someone who wants to say, scale up on your finances, you're someone who is saying, I have this number of income channels, I want to do more. Yes, you might want somebody who is a bit aware of the financial space, but if you have someone who is also developing themselves themselves with respect to their career, the person also qualifies, because the idea is that the person has a growth mindset. When you're trying to be accountable to someone, you want to be in that committed space with someone who has a growth mindset. So is the person growing in an area of their life, or if you would prefer, is the person also growing in that area that you also want to grow as well, because that is very key. Okay. Now, the other thing that, came to me while I was thinking through this accountability is that sometimes when you're really dedicated to your track of growth, you could end up growing a bit faster and grow a bit bigger than the person you're accountable to. It is very likely that you will grow much faster than the person is growing, and probably even bigger. So that means you want to look out for someone who will be comfortable with that growth. Somebody who, say, let's look at the finance space again. Maybe this person has just started talking about, oh, I started earning 6 figures. and then you've been accountable to that person, you've been on 5 figures, but you did not just, start to achieve 6 figures earning. You started achieving 7. The person must be comfortable to keep you accountable to your growth. Not the person that will be, uncomfortable that you are, coming up with a lot of ideas and will start telling you, you need to slow down. You need to slow down. You have to take it easy. God doesn't want us to be too money conscious. If you're having a conversation like that and you have a desire for much more, but maybe that's not the kind of person you want to be accountable to. I know that may be a bit tough sometimes because, yes, maybe a lot of times we might be a bit excessive with our drive. So it's good to have a balance. But if you find out that every time you're in conversation with that person, you can almost sense that the person is uncomfortable with your speed or with your rate of growth, then you probably need to recheck it again. So maybe you want to check some things out, right? When it comes to committing to that person. Now you may be saying, okay, FolaFayo, I have someone that I'm trying to be accountable to. How does the accountability conversation, how does it go? The first thing is that it has to be intentional. You both need to know that this talk we're having is to stay accountable. This talk we're having is to stay accountable. It's not a gisting time. It's a session where I am going to be telling you how far I've come on what I told you compared to what I really want to achieve. It's an intentional conversation. It is focused and it is planned. So you need to tell the person, you know what, I think we should connect once a week. Or I think we should connect once a month. I know that some of the people that I have in my space, like my husband, I'm definitely accountable to him. We debrief practically every day. So that one is like as planned as that. But I have friends that we connect once in 2 weeks. I have other people that's once a month, and I have some that are not as regular. But you know that when you're in that call, when I get into that call, there are conversations on what's going on. What are you doing? And you are asking the person that, and the person is also asking you. It's an intentional conversation. It's not just a light conversation like, oh, what are you doing? Really sounds good. Oh, really? No. But you people are being intentional. You are focused and it is planned. Now, the other thing that you want to look out for, because if you want to set up a mutually accountable partnership with someone, that means that the person wants to be accountable to you. You want to be accountable to the person. This is also something you want to make sure that you're doing for the person to make sure that the person is actually also seeing results. All right. So you want to also make sure that you are reminding the person, or you are being reminded to celebrate growth. Because what's happening to a lot of us is that let's go back to finance. I'm going to talk a little bit more about finance because that's kind of easy to measure with the metrics and all of that. So you say you want to start to earn 1 million naira monthly, for example, and you used to earn just 10,000 naira monthly before. And you're like, okay, by the end of the year, I want to start earning 1 million. If you're in an accountability session and you're talking about the fact that, okay, you've now consistently in 3 months earned 20,000 monthly, that is a milestone that is worth celebrating. In that session, you must acknowledge that. Even if you don't want to celebrate it more because in your mind, you're like, FolaFayo 20,000 compared to 1 million, that's like chicken change, I know, but that's growth. Because if you compare it to where you're coming from, you have doubled your achievements, you have doubled your results, and you need to do that to be. Remember, we're talking about staying on track and enjoying it because some of us are not giving ourselves a pat on the back for the things that we are doing. We are growing. Nobody might be telling you that, but in that thing, you're growing. And you need to celebrate that. The other thing you want to do when you're in that conversation with someone is to probe the holdback. You want to probe the holdback and be able to say, okay, the last time we spoke, you said you were going to do this. What exactly happened? Why didn't that get done? What held you back? You want to probe the holdback and then be able to say, okay, what will you now do to make sure that before we meet again or talk again, you will start to do something different about it. So like I said, it's an intentional conversation, and it's something that I would say that you need to do with a lot of focus. You need to both agree that this is the kind of thing I'm going to be having. And for people who want to stay accountable to a particular person, maybe the person doesn't know that's what you want. At some point in your connections, right? You want to bring it up and say, you know what, I'm on this change journey. I want to start to do this thing, or I want to modify this thing in my life. I want to be accountable to you. This is what I would like to do. So now you have an understanding of what it will take for you to enjoy an accountable relationship with someone. You can tell the person, okay, can I call you once a week or once in 2 weeks? I would just tell you my progress, and I would want, feedback from you. And you expect that that's what's going to happen. Now, if you're saying, FolaFayo, I have great friends, but honestly, I don't have anybody I can think of that I can put as, on that pedestal or in that position to say, I'm accountable on this journey. Please let us have a conversation. Please book a private session, complimentary session. Let's have a conversation and see how you can be set up on this. Because I can tell you that accountability, it helps you stay on track. It has helped me. And I know that every area, every one of us has been accountable to in our lives. We always see results, right? We always see results. So let's get that set up. Now, just before we close for tonight, I want to just quickly touch on what does it take to enjoy the change journey? I was going to say a lot of things in that, but I'll just brush over it quickly. And if we need to continue on another session of Thriving Thursday, we'll probably do that. So what does it take to enjoy? The first thing is a strong why. A strong why. I know a lot of people always say, okay, you need to know your why, you need to know your why. Okay, so I'll tell you something I started doing with the people that I work with, especially those in a particular mastermind group, the one we're going to be having later in May, June, the mastermind group for the middle of the year, our season 2, is to do a 7-step why exercise. And you may be saying 7-step, wow, what does that entail? Okay, I'll just talk about it simply. It's to say, when you decide, especially when that change journey is going to be something big, it's going to be something that is not something casual, not something like, oh, you just want to change your route to work. That one's a little bit simple, but it's going to be something big. Like I said earlier, you're earning 10,000 and you say you want to be earning 1 million, say in a year's time or 2 years time monthly, right? In the 7-level why exercise, we're going to be asking and answering the reason why deep by 7 levels. So I will ask you, so if you're in a session with me, I will ask you a question like, why do you want to earn 1 million? You could say, oh, because you want to be able to pay your bills much more and you want to do a lot more with money, okay? And I'm like, 2nd level, why do you want to pay your bills and do much more with money? And you're like, well, because you know what? I have a lot of bills piling up and, I don't want to owe anyone. That's the reason why I want to be able to pay, easily. And then I ask you, 3rd level, why do you want to pay easily? And then we start to go deeper. Now, what happens is by the time we get to the 7th level, you will find out that the core reason why you want to create that change becomes apparent to you. And anytime you have an understanding of what that big why is, it helps you stay on track and you enjoy that consistency. Because a lot of us don't have the connection with a strong why. When we find challenges along the way, it's easy for us to come down on our plans. So how do you connect? Ask yourself those questions and then connect very well with your why. Now, the other part of connecting is connecting with your core. Connecting with your core. I've mentioned this on one of our previous sessions. I think late last year, we had a session where I mentioned this, but I'm mentioning it again, is you need to connect your change journey with who you are. So if whatever you're looking at doing differently would involve doing something early in the morning and you're a night person, that's not your core. You know what's going to happen? You will start, and after a while, even if you're accountable, you will struggle. Every time you go into your accountability session, conversations, you're going to be finding yourself, saying, I don't know why I just couldn't wake up early this morning, because you are naturally a night person. So even if you want to change completely to be a morning person, you need to start with that night attitude or habit of yours and gradually transition to a morning thing. Okay. Now, for someone who is saying, you know what, I've been hearing so much about personal development, right? And I've been hearing so much about personal development. I want to grow myself. I want to start to read books and all that. But you're not someone who is much of a reading person, but you actually like audio, like music, and maybe a bit of videos. Then you want to make sure that you're looking out for books or podcasts. So you're looking out for ebooks that you can listen to, or podcasts, because that is your core. You are that kind of person. You're not someone who enjoys sitting up, because what happens with a lot of us is some of our friends will on social media. I do that a lot of times because I love to read books. I like hard copy, right? So I could share a book now and say, this is my current read, or this is a book I just finished reading. Meanwhile, someone that does not enjoy reading normally will see that and might be feeling, but I don't like reading though. And you know what will happen? Before that day ends, the person will probably listen to like 10 albums of their favorite artists. because that's the kind of person that person is, right? So you need to ask yourself, okay, on this journey, these things I want to do, where can I start with that can ease me gradually into a place where I will stretch? Because a lot of us are not doing that question and answering. Are we connecting to our why? Are we connecting to ourselves? Now, another thing that I want to end on today that is very, very important for us to be able to enjoy our journey to change is for us to not just celebrate our growth, which I mentioned earlier, is for us to share our stories. I know that my husband and myself, we've been in the counseling space, marriage counseling space for a while now. And sometime in 2018, 2019, when we had a lot of couples that we were working with who were just about to get married, every time they shared their story of how they met, we were sharing our story of how we met as well. And I can tell you, my husband and myself always talk about the fact that it's a refresher. When you talk about something you've done in the past and you're doing well with today, it strengthens you. It gives you a motivation again. So the question I want to ask you today is, are you sharing your story? Some people will be saying, FolaFayo, you are saying we should come out again. It's not about necessarily doing live sessions. Someone like me, I'll tell you that there are times, let me confess. I'll tell you that there are times that, I think about my podcast and I'm like, what am I going to share? Or Thriving Thursday sessions like this. And I'm like, what am I going to share? But then the truth is, I tell myself, if you're learning, you will have something to share. Because personally, I love to share what I learn, right? I'm just that kind of person. If I learn something today, or I see myself embracing the concept in my space and I'm seeing a change, I immediately want to talk about it. It's because I enjoy it. How do you enjoy sharing your story? If it is only with your family members, do it. If you're someone who likes to just share a bit of the story by pictures on status or social media, or you want to write a book around it, you need to do it. But sharing your story, it helps you to enjoy your journey. It helps you to enjoy your journey. So I don't know what peculiar way you might need to share your story, but I can tell you that when you share your story and you know that as you share that story, one person, all it takes is one person to tell you that I was blessed when you gave me that bit of information about how you did yours, you will stay on track. I'm telling you, you will say, in fact, you will tell yourself, even if it's because of this person, you will tell yourself, even if it is because of this person, I will stay on track, right? Now, the thing about this, as I end on this tonight, is a lot of times some of us feel like we're not deserving to share our story. We think we need to be miles ahead of people before we do something. No, you don't. You just need to be a step ahead to be able to share your story. If you're a step ahead of someone in an area where you are working on change, you are in the right place to share your story. You are in the right place to be a blessing to that person. So don't think, I'm not yet coaching 50 people in a year, so I don't deserve to talk to someone who is a new coach. No, if you've coached one person, you qualify. You qualify. Sharing your story and letting your story bless someone else helps you to enjoy this journey of change toward the things you want to accomplish. I think that the most valuable thing that I made sure I did today was cover up on all that it takes for us to stay on track with our change and to enjoy the journey. Like I said at the beginning, if you feel like, FolaFayo, there's something I need to get back on track on. There's something I need to get back on track on. I'll be happy to have a complimentary session with you. Please book a session with your preferred time. And if you're on Instagram, do send me a DM and let's call it change. Let's call it change, all right? But if you're on Facebook, we're going to have a team member drop the link where you can immediately just book your session and then we can have a conversation. But I'll be happy to see you, start getting excited about the change journey that you're working on. And so thank you everyone for joining me on Instagram. Dr. Josephine, I see you. Moni Naturals, Temi, I see you. Tolu, I see you. D Concepts as well. And P Inspiration, thank you for joining. On Facebook, thank you for joining. Bridget Oshagbemi, I see you as well. And Enod and Toko Gufayo, thank you for dropping. I would get back to all the things that you shared as well here, just as we close on this. Thank you everyone for joining me. I look forward to having you join again on another session of Thriving Thursday next week. And enjoy the rest of your weekend and keep thriving. God bless you. Bye-bye.